Thank you and welcome to our first in a four-part series of building digital resilience. Effectively, we're very excited and proud to share with you and have Yaron Assabi, DSG Group Founder and CEO on our webinar today, as well as Umut Albay from LastPass, who's the Principal Regional Partner for Sales and he manages Africa and a number of regions. Today, Yaron and Umut will take you on a journey that really focuses on the rapid speed at which we're hurtling toward passwordless authentication. We know for certainty that employees, their passwords, and the passwords that are being used remain one of the most compromised ways of threat actors entering and accessing organizations. The latest breach, which speaks to Uber, seemingly points to MFA and MFA fatigue. When we really look at that MFA fatigue, we see what we call a barrage of instances in terms of authentication requests, and eventually what happens is you find that the individuals stop that barrage. They refer to as access granted, and they're therefore causing what you see today in terms of that Uber breach which occurred last week. So I think by all accounts, we know that by 2025, more than 50% of the workforce and 20% of customer authentication transactions will be passwordless. We know that we're hurtling toward this at a rapid speed, and we understand and know that there has to be a different way. For us, we as Digital Resilience and LastPass believe that moving to a password authentication is not like switching a light on and off, it's a journey. And I think for us, what we want to take you through today is what that journey looks like. I think also for us, what's important to share is that, again, the landscape is continuously changing. What we refer to as the attack landscape will continue to morph and change. And it's how we continue to respond that makes a significant difference. So as shared, on the call today, we have Yaron Assabi and Umut. And I think what we're going to start off with, gentlemen, is I'm going to hand over to Yaron, who's going to give a quick introduction. And then we're going to move on to Umut, who will kind of lead us through the LastPass, particularly that from passwords to a passwordless experience. Yaron, over to you.
Great, thanks. Nadine, will you go to the next slide? Thanks. So great to have such a great attendance today. Thank you very much for joining us. As mentioned, I'm the founder of Digital Solutions Group. We just turned 24 years old on the 1st of September. Our first company, as you can see on DSG, was digitalmall.com. We were one of the first e-commerce solution providers in South Africa in the late 90s, and every fourth transaction on our website was a fraud attempt. So we had to be very conscious of cybersecurity and fraud management since the early days of the group, and we really launched Digital Resilience in 2018. We have some amazing partnerships with some amazing customers, and we're really passionate about developing cybersecurity skills in Africa. We want to try and resolve this issue around 3.5 million unfilled jobs in cybersecurity this year. We invested quite a bit in training, technical and corporate training, and a variety of platforms. We're very proud to be working with LastPass. LastPass has been a wonderful partner for us over the last few years, helping a lot of South African corporates manage their security requirements when it comes to passwords. And Umut will take us through an in-depth presentation around the future of passwords and how the world is evolving towards a passwordless future, and it's really, really exciting. And we certainly have seen LastPass really assist our own organization and our clients mitigate that risk of using the same password over and over again on multiple sites, and then when that password is hacked, a lot of data gets compromised. And it's one of the highest forms of breaches. So we're really excited to have Umut here today. And if you're interested in more information about DSG, please drop me a line. But I'll hand over to Umut, and I'm really excited to talk about the future of passwordless environment. Thanks, Umut.
Thank you very much, Yaron, for this introduction. And we are also certainly proud to be working with you, DSG, for many years now, and serving our customers across the African continent. And this is great to be here. So thank you all for joining. We will be talking about a few topics today around passwords and the reality of passwords. But just before starting this, I would like to say a few words about me. I am Umut, part of the LastPass channel team, looking after our customers in Africa, and I am based in the Karlsruhe office in Germany. So LastPass is a company that I have been working at now for almost for 6-7 years. So this is a topic which I'm extremely excited to be talking to you about today. So before we dive deep into the reality of this topic around passwords and how organizations are coping with them, there is one reality which needs our attention, perhaps, and this is the fact that 80% of cyber attacks occur due to passwords. So, and this is quite huge and worrisome also. On the other hand, employee password practices remain like the weakest link in a company's cybersecurity system, and this is what is putting sensitive data at risk. And when thinking about the possibility to grant employees to work efficiently from anywhere, from any devices, businesses need to ensure security controls are in place. If we go, for instance, to the next slide, actually there is, no organization, no one who is like sheltered. Just to the next slide, perhaps, Brendan. Yeah, here we go. So today, what we are going to cover is the threat landscape, the password headache, the passwordless future, and why the need for a password manager. And we will also try to, of course, answer your questions in the chat. So feel free to drop us like any question. We'll be happy to provide you some answers. To the next slide, please, Brendan. Here we go. Yeah. So as we have seen, like lately, what happened to some leading global organizations, and be it Uber, like T-Mobile, SolarWinds, MailChimp, is that all of those incidents occurred because of employees' misbehavior, if we need to call it this way. And at the heart of those incidents, they detected that passwords were compromised, and that's the reason why we are kind of asking how could we make sure so that employees can navigate online in a very safe way, and how can we help you make your digital life more secure. So in the next slide, Brendan. Yeah. So here, what is actually extremely striking to see is that no organization, no individual is sheltered, safe from those type of breaches. And this breach landscape is something which is ever evolving, because if we look at it, 85% of breaches involve a human element. And on the other hand, what we also see is that people are creating more accounts than the previous year. So the number of credentials like employees rely on to, the number of like passwords people rely on to is always like increasing. And what we are seeing here, what we are like seeing as a common factor is the human misbehavior. And what's worse is that businesses unfortunately aren't implementing password management best practices. So in the next slide, as you'll see, the next, yeah. So in order to get to the bottom of the password headache, I mean, we need to diagnose it. We need to really admit the fact that passwords are becoming a challenge, and there are, of course, ways to address this, and we'll go through this. So to the next slide. Yeah. So like as you see here, I changed all my password to incorrect. I mean, usually when you're asking people about how they are setting up passwords, they usually set up easy to remember passwords, don't they? So this could be like password 123, or as you see here, like it's incorrect. And this is often the case because once we are helping organizations implementing a password management solution like LastPass in that case, is that they are able to run a security through the security dashboard. They are able to scan all of their passwords, and what they are actually identifying is that most of the time they have like duplicate passwords or extremely weak passwords. that is often the case. So before I go next, I think we also have some poll questions, which I would like us to launch, and
thanks, Umut. So, yeah, absolutely. Umut, we've got 2 questions for our attendees today. And I think what will happen is I'm going to push the first poll. We're going to connect the information, and then we're going to share with you what we find through the polls. But I guess the first question is, do you reuse the same password on any platforms and all platforms? So if you could answer that for us, we'd appreciate it. Again, do you reuse the same password or passwords on any or all of your platforms? Simple yes, no. There we go. Umut, it's quite interesting. We're seeing kind of a vary in terms of the yes and no's. But at this point, we're seeing 64% sitting at a yes. I do reuse the same passwords on platforms or multiple platforms. Okay, we're now sitting at a 60-40 with 88% of the votes in, which means really 60% say yes, I do use the same password, and 40% say no, I do not use the same password. All right, so we're going to close the poll. So we know it's a 60-40 split between yes and no, which is quite interesting, because I think part of what we know is that there's a broad challenge around password reuse. Correct, Umut?
Absolutely, Brendan. Here we go.
All right, and then the second question, I think, yep, very interesting. The second question we have for you today really is around understanding the primary reason for your use and or deployment of a password manager or password management. And again, there's multiple answers or multiple answers that are available to you. I'm going to launch that now. It'll be interesting to understand, the reason or use for you. Again, what would be the primary reason for use or deployment of password management for yourself or your business? Okay. So far at this point, from what we're seeing, it varying between poor password management habits and inherent risk within my business, and a split of we do not use any password management. And then one that we put in there, which was my business organization has forced me, seems to be featuring too. I'll let you know once all the votes are in. All right, so Umut, just to again around that particular question, we know that we see that the primary reason for use, according to our audience and attendees today, 40% relates to poor password management and habits. The second is 53% that refer to the inherent risk within my business and personal digital life. The third is 7%, which is my business organization forces me. And then the last is we do 20% sits at we do not use any form of password management. Interesting.
Yeah, that's a reality about poor password practices. So this is actually why we are also here today. And on the next slide, I'd like to show actually some figures, some numbers here. I promise I won't bombard you with some numbers, but wow. Okay, now we see the results. Okay, so. Great. Cool. Thanks for answering all these questions. So actually, what we are seeing is that there is actually a lot of awareness. I mean, people like a bit from IT teams, like security team, who we are talking with, like CISOs. Of course, they are like security conscious. Of course, they are cognizant about this reality of this challenge this causes. I mean, passwords. However, in terms of action, it could be better. So as the figures here show, is that 79% agree that compromised passwords are concerning, whilst 92% know that using the same password or a variation is a huge risk. And what people, however, do is that only 51% rely on their memory to keep track of passwords, while 65% always or mostly still use the same password or variation. So this is extremely concerning for organizations. And most of the time when they have like a personal related credential and are used to setting up like a password for that personal account, they often use the same password also for their business credentials as well. So and out of all those respondents to our surveys, that what we are seeing is that 45% did not change their passwords at all. So and that's perhaps also the reason why organizations are looking for a way to automate this, so that a password management solution can do this work on behalf of employees without having to worry about like setting up passwords or keeping in mind their passwords, etc. and etc. In the next slide, as you'll also see, 46% of the people did not strengthen their passwords while working remotely. And 44% shared sensitive information and passwords for professional accounts while working remotely. And this is also another worrisome aspect which I want to highlight. I mean, beyond managing all of those multiple credentials which you are relying on to, there is also another reality which is about sharing sensitive data. And most of the time what we are hearing is that teams, when they collaborate, when they work together, they are sharing, passwords, they are sharing, let's say, like SSH key, they are sharing like Wi-Fi information. And when they are being asked, how do they share all of this? Most of the time they will tell you like, they are sharing, through WhatsApp, they are sharing through emails, they are sharing through online spreadsheets like on Excel. And the question is, how secure is this? And this is also something which we are helping organizations so that they can securely but also conveniently share this type of sensitive data. 39% on the employer side about remote work habits. What we are seeing is that 39% made sure employees logged on the company network via secure networks while working remotely. And a third almost made employees update their passwords more regularly. And 35% enhanced authentication methods. So this is also a trend which we are seeing and which we are also helping organizations so that they could, not only enhance this password behavior practices, but also put in place authentication methods such as MFA, 2FA, etc. So in the next slide, if we go, Brandon. So this is the Lindy effect. I mean, since the 1960s, what we are seeing is that, passwords, are everywhere. This is something which is undeniable and unavoidable, as employees are extremely and heavily relying on passwords. But towards the future, and also in light of what Gartner, like leading consulting firms like Gartner are predicting, is that organizations are going to move towards a passwordless authentication, so that we could help employees and reduce this human element which we were referring to earlier. Because when we are talking about like IAM, broadly speaking, identity and access management, we can take it from different angles. We can take it from a life cycle management perspective to SSO, to MFA, but all of those actions, for instance, which are taken by like privileged users, like administrators, those are actions which you can take on behalf of employees. And once you're implementing SSO or like MFA, you know that the user is going to be prompted with MFA. So there is no action required from the end user. However, when it comes to managing, those passwords, storing passwords, accessing, like those websites which are not covered by, SSO systems. I'm mainly talking about all those web-based application passwords which are not covered by SSO. There is still here like a human element. And how could we make sure to reduce this human element to not expose the organization to all of the cyber threats, right? We can't all the time rely on the end user and expecting him to have good online habits. This is all about education. This is all about educating them, helping them understand the risks this causes, and this is the reason why we want to really lessen this human element risk by implementing a passwordless authentication. And this is where lately we had even released the passwordless login to the vault of LastPass without requiring you to enter a username and password when authenticating into LastPass. In the next slide, Brandon. So actually, how do you move forward into a passwordless future? So on the employee side, password nuisance is the fear of being breached, and because it's followed by too many passwords. End users want simplicity, and so we can help them be really productive without being disrupted. They want an easy to use tool, obviously. And on the cybersecurity team side, identity challenges balancing security requirements and user experience. So in this respect, we help you be more secure with our solution. So to the next slide. Okay, why and where enterprise password management? Sorry for the abbreviation. So we can go next. Yep, next. I think. Exactly. Yeah, this is what I actually was also earlier referring to. So this is the IAM stack, and we have on the one hand like MFA, SSO. We have PAM solutions, of course, privileged access management, for servers, databases, devices, and user directory. So usually, when we are talking to customers, who are like in Azure environment, like Google Workspace environment, Okta environment, what we are hearing from admins is that they want to optimize the authentication workflow so that we can reduce the burden of authenticating through different credentials. And this is the reason why it's extremely important, I think, to have integration with your main identity provider. Be it Azure, be it the on-prem AD, be it like Okta, OneLogin, so we can actually help employees access, be federated with your main directory. Yeah. Otherwise, they would have to rely on the one hand on the user directory like username and password, and on the other hand on the LastPass, for instance, like username and password. But we want to avoid this, and that's the reason why we want to make it as simple as possible to really help them authenticate with a click of a button into all of their applications. So here, as you can see, like on the users and admin side, there are so many cloud apps, like shared credentials, which are out there, not encrypted, not covered. If you don't have like a reliable enterprise password management solution, and this is where LastPass, for instance, that comes into play, so that we could also cover all of these areas. And in the next slide, we can also try to perhaps understand why companies are implementing our solution. There are, of course, multiple reasons, different, use cases from a company to another, from a vertical to another, be it from education, be it from oil gas industry, be it from retail groups. If we go to the next slide. Yeah. Next. Okay. So here, as you can see, about LastPass, yeah. What you'll see here is that on the one hand, you'll have the password management, you'll have the SSO, you'll have the MFA, but here also what is striking is that over 85,000 businesses rely onto LastPass. And we have nearly slightly over 30 million users all across the globe relying on LastPass. I mean, be it on the consumer side, be it on the business side. And in the tool, what you'll also, get to experience is that it's an easy user management and reporting with auditing capabilities, with a security dashboard, for instance, where you can have the possibility to scan all of your passwords to detect if there is any compromised or leaked passwords, credentials across your organization. And all of it is possible from your administration console. So this is a privileged access administrators are granted to be able to really run reports, audit, and can integrate the tool with their main IDP. We are perhaps one of the unique solution provider who is offering over 100 security policies. So most of the time, for instance, in organizations, because of some security rules, they want to prevent users from accessing LastPass outside the company IP address, or they want to limit the sharing feature to some users. This could be intern people joining the organizations for a few months before they leave. So there are over 100 security policies which could be activated. So what we also focus on while developing the solution is to really make it a frictionless user experience. Here, because LastPass is purely designed for everyone across the organization and not only privileged users. We want to make sure people are really comfortable using it, and that's why we have a focus on the user experience so that they can feel extremely at ease when using it. What also is great is, I mean, based on feedback which we have, been receiving in the past years, is that people are also managing a lot of personal related passwords, aren't they? And that's the reason why we are offering our corporate customers family licenses as a benefit, so that they could link their family account to their business account without mixing up those corporate related credentials from the personal ones, and so that they can just conveniently segregate work related credentials from their personal credentials. And this is a great way for people to really just simply link it to their business without having to even log in twice. In the next slide, Brandon. Cool. Yeah, this is actually what I wanted to touch on. I mean, there are of course multiple reasons, different use cases which vary, but here what we can see is that there is a need to address the cyber risk surface across the entire organization landscape, and passwordless authentication for seamless secure access. One of the reasons. And businesses are looking to consolidate an identity framework and eliminating all of those password related risks such as weak and reused passwords and all of the risks associated to human behavior, and most importantly improving password controls and password policy enforcement across the entire credentials landscape. The great thing is that once an individual is starting using LastPass, is that LastPass will detect all of their passwords and run a scan and advise the user about all of the weak reused passwords which have been flagged in the security dashboard, and they would then be able to really set strong secure passwords in a very automated way. So this is what we call uniquely randomizing passwords. So for each set of credential website, they will be able to automate a very strong secure passwords without having to type it manually. what also organizations are, looking to is to reduce existing risk associated with the credentials gap left between SSO, PAM, and all other password requirements. Of course, because SSO solutions, are not able to cover all of those website like online website applications passwords, and this is where solutions like LastPass comes into play. And other reasons to implementing LastPass is to reduce successful phishing attempts. So as you have seen it like earlier in the figures, 80%, this is huge, because of, those passwords behavior, and reducing, success rate of phishing attacks across all business function is one of the key elements which organizations are, keen to achieve. And in this respect, LastPass avoids presentation of credentials to a site that is not contained within the password vault. So even if a user clicks on a link, the credentials won't be presented. So to reduce like third-party risks, of course, improving password controls or password policy enforcement is key. And this is the reason why we are continuously onboarding administrators before they roll it out to like end users about some best practices in terms of like policies which they can like implement, as there are like over hundreds of policies that could really help them achieve their security goals. And last but not least, the possibility to strengthen regulatory and compliance position. So improving reporting posture for audit and compliance purposes, identifying users or group of users where poor password practices and reuse place the organization at greater risk of a successful cyber penetration. All right, and to go to before going to the next slide also, here we go. Use case, so protection against phishing. So LastPass helps avoid social engineering attempts from malicious websites. And here, what we're also seeing is that keep track use of shared credentials, which is also like a big headache, because most of the time IT teams, security teams are not aware about all of those credentials being shared, for instance. And what if this person leaves the organization, and turns out that he has shared multiple credentials, or is it taking all of those credentials with him when leaving the organization? How can admins like keep track of all of this? What is the best way to automate, like the sharing, for instance? And in this respect, the reporting in LastPass gives an overview for administrators to see exactly, who is sharing what, for instance, from the administration console. So next slide. Yeah. So easy onboarding and offboarding. So LastPass shows how automating the onboarding and offboarding process allows organizations to achieve faster workflows and reduce risk, all while securing user resource access. This is especially relevant for users with predefined login credentials or when working with third parties or project-specific teams. And the reporting dashboard, which I was referring to earlier, is a really great and convenient way for administrators to, look at the overall hygiene of passwords, right? So within the first weeks of, implementing LastPass, of course, what is extremely worrisome is to see all of these weak passwords, like duplicate passwords, which employees still rely on to. But following the implementation and following like the onboarding of like users and the adoption of the tool, what they are also seeing on the security dashboard is that the password hygiene increases up to 80–90% just after a few weeks of implementing LastPass. And the security dashboard really gives you really great figures about how secure your company's digital assets are. Yeah, and this is why you will find like the user activity dashboard, you will find like the admin activity dashboard, the security and the login reports at your fingerprints. Before we wrap it up, I mean, of course, we'll get to answer your questions, but I would like to also hand it over to Brendan, so we can also let you know about like a upcoming event which we will be attending next month, hopefully. So Brendan, back to you.
Thanks, Umut. I think the audience could agree. It's evident that we know that password management, there's a challenge. Then the bigger challenge is kind of moving toward how do we not use passwords. And we know that I touched on it a little bit earlier, and a lot of the literature that we have available for you today on the handouts. So just on your panel, you'll see there's a handout section. There's some amazing literature, compliments at LastPass. But I think part of that is that I think we need to understand that passwordless, kind of passwordless authentication is more about a journey rather than a destination. I think there will be a continuous evolution. So I think that's the first. The second is, Umut, spot on, thank you. We are very proud to have Umut and the team at CISO Africa, 26 to 27 October. So if you want to pop in and say hi and come and understand and meet us face to face, we'll be there. Happy to engage with you, answer any other questions you may have, should we not cover them today, particularly in terms of what we're seeing coming through. So, Umut, do you mind, and Yaron, would you mind if I sort of started off with just a couple of the sort of questions that have been addressed to you, and then we can kind of get some of your answers. So, Umut, I'm mindful you've been smashing away. So let me pose the first one to Yaron, we can then get Yaron's feedback, and then we'll jump to you. That's fine. So, Yaron, just a quick question I see that's come through from the audience. It says, Yaron, do you use LastPass, and can you share your experience with us? Are you on mute, Yaron? I think.
Sorry about that.
There you go. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. Most famous quote of 2020 to 2022. You're on mute. We use LastPass. We actually insist that every single employee that works for DSG gets an onboarding to LastPass as part of the overall onboarding, because it's really important for us to be able to protect the business from the misuse or misutilization of passwords. And for us, we actually insist that you keep your LastPass score. So LastPass has got this amazing gamification, and it creates a score for you above 80% in order to carry on working with DSG. So it's actually part of your employment contract, and it's something that we totally insist that employees become aware of. As was mentioned throughout the presentation, the biggest risk is that employees use the same password that they might use on social media for their personal basis. Social media site gets hacked. LinkedIn was hacked a couple of times, Facebook multiple times. The passwords get exposed, and then we get exposed. So we use LastPass all the time. We also use all the different policies that Umut mentioned, over 100 policies. So for example, a big behavior that you can eliminate using LastPass from a hacking perspective is that hackers generally manage to get in to a server and then change the password to the server so they can control it. You could implement a corporate policy that says you cannot change passwords unless you're on the LAN. So unless the hackers physically in your offices, they can't manage all these different passwords. The ability to share passwords with third parties using sharing through LastPass without having to share the actual password credentials is really nice for Wi-Fi management, for example, in our offices. So we have a WeWork environment at DSG that we created during the hybrid times now post-pandemic, and we've decided to use the LastPass to share the Wi-Fi with guests rather than have to write the Wi-Fi password on the wall, which is obviously not good practice. So these are just some practical examples of how we use LastPass, but I can certainly tell you that with all the different research that I do, all the different sites that I log on to. LastPass on mobile as well, on the Mac has been particularly helpful for me because of all the different services, SAT services that we have to try and remember all these passwords and generate long passwords, which you should do as best practice, is really, really difficult. I can't imagine a day going past without LastPass, and I'm sure that's the rest of the employees at DSG. It's an integral part of everything that I do. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Yaron. Agreed. I think when you look at it from a DSG digital resilience, the use of LastPass is significant. It makes a significant difference when you deal with sensitive information. We look at our finance team, CFOs. You know, these are traditionally individuals that don't understand the importance of security. They don't understand the importance of password management. You know, for them, it's here's the little sticky notepad, you know, for their finance team. Here's the password. So agreed 100%.
Great.
Excellent. So another question from Claire, and I'm just Claire to Blanche. I'm just going to kind of blend the two. The one is LastPass easy to set up? Umut, and I think this would probably be directed at you. And what would the process generally be to set up LastPass for a business?
Yep. So thanks for this question. This is absolutely correct. I mean, what we want to really make sure is to give, you know, an easy to use experience to people, because we are cognizant that when implementing LastPass, not only like privileged users, like administrators, you know, get to use it, but also like end users, you know, need to, you know, use it. So this could be like anyone from like HR team, like from finance team, people who may not be like tech savvy, you know, or and that's the reason why our product and design team made sure that this product is really easy to use, so that people, you know, from the different departments like outside IT, security can feel comfortable using it. So it's just like a plug and play. So all what, you know, like a user needs to do is to have LastPass added into their Chrome browser, and from there they can just access their accounts, you know, their vault and all of their credentials with a click of a button. And the other question was, Brandon?
Oh, well, I've kind of blended the two from Claire to Blanche, which spoke to, is it easy? And what's the general process to get set up? I mean, I think we've had experience where we've onboarded a recent customer, and part of that onboarding is kind of a customer success manager that joins on the journey to ensure that you get set up successfully. Okay. Excellent. Another that I think is just directed toward you, Umut, is can you log out a user remotely from a dashboard if you have security concerns? This is from Peter Bredenkamp.
Can you log out?
Can you log out a user remote? Yep. If you have security concerns. So can you log out an individual remotely if you have security concerns? That's the question, I think.
Oh, that's a good question.
Great.
We can take this offline. I mean, and put him through like our technical team. I'd be happy to answer this question. Yeah.
As far as we understand, yes, it's possible. But I think how is probably what we can explore with you, Peter. The other question, I guess, that we're seeing coming through from Naledi Sibego is, how will users receive any authentication hardware they might need for access? Now, Yaron, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it's a hardware-based solution.
Yeah, I mean, multi-factor authentication can be done in many different ways. You could use facial recognition, use finger, and you can use SMS as a different channel for multi-factor authentication. So you're not limited to specific hardware. And what's nice about LastPass is that there is a LastPass Authenticator app as well that you could have, just like Microsoft's got a Microsoft Authenticator app. So you could do in-app authentication. You could do SMS-based authentication, as well as using your facial recognition and biometric. Other finger biometrics and things like that. So very flexible from an MFA perspective, and LastPass can integrate into your existing MFA solution.
Absolutely.
Or we could supply the turnkey solution with our own MFA, which obviously is an integral part of the offering. So you have both options, which maybe you want to expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally correct, Yaron. Actually, there are, for instance, like organizations who are still using like hardware for authentication method, like YubiKey. I'm thinking of just like and in this respect, LastPass offers this type of integration so that we can like help you seamlessly achieve this type of integration with your existing MFA. So you don't have to use the inbuilt LastPass authentication application, but still continue to rely on your organization's authentication policy. Absolutely.
Correct.
Another question that's come through in terms of from Peter Burdenkamp is, can you block an employee from your dashboard? So again, possibly could lean into the other in terms of logging out or blocking. So if you pick up somebody, you might have some challenge.
Actually, when talking about blocking, well, we need to perhaps like expand on it, and that's a great question. Thank you. But I think, as far as I know, an administrator is given the possibility to, take control, like deactivating user, or revoking access, for instance, so that the employee is no longer able to access his vault. So there are such actions which administrators can take, of course, but I would be happy to also hear more about this use case about blocking and in order to perform, for instance, like which actions, so we can, in details provide answers to that. Absolutely, we can take it offline.
Yeah, I also wanted to add that you could encrypt. On older passwords are encrypted, so even if a user was hacked or whatever the case may be, you won't necessarily get to the data. So I wanted to clarify that for the question, because a lot of people say, yeah, but LastPass was hacked, but and they attempt that LastPass was hacked in the past. No user data was ever compromised because of the encryption that LastPass uses, and I think that's quite important. So I understand that Peter might be looking to remove a user because they've been hacked or whatever, so they can protect the rest of the organization, saying that the risk is mitigated through the encryption that we use as well. And generally, you shouldn't have access to the actual data. You might be able to break an account or something like that, but if you can't access any of the data, it's futile, right? So, and Umut, I think that's a question that always comes up, so I like to bring it up. LastPass has been hacked, but none of the data is meaningful to the hacker, so maybe you want to expand on that.
Yes, actually, I mean, the day actually we had discovered this incident happening, I mean, it took us perhaps like few days following like the ongoing investigation to make this information public towards like all our customers, because what really matters is that we need to be acting in a very accountable way, and that's perhaps the reason why our CEO had published like a blog post, which we would be happy also to provide in the chat. And following like all this investigation and the partnership we had like with this third-party forensic company conducting this investigation, is that there was no evidence at all that a customer's data was breached or compromised. So absolutely, but we'd be happy to provide you the link to the blog post in a minute. I'll just look for it.
Great.
Thanks,
but of course, I mean, if there are any questions around this topic, I mean, certainly.
Yes, there was a question around it to say there was a recent threat. So I'm glad that you raised it, Yaron, because it does come up. Yep. So thanks for preempting that particular one. So that particular question is now being answered. It has been answered. The other question, Yaron, whilst Umut is doing that, I think this would really sort of fall, I think, to you in terms of providing an answer. We know that you manage several data sets that are both sensitive, information, etc., and then the kind of the sharing of accessibility to it. According to the question here is how do you manage several of those? Again, is LastPass, does it suit that need?
Absolutely. So you can actually have a shared folder where you keep those passwords. And what makes life really easy is that best practice would say that you should change your Wi-Fi passwords on a regular basis every 2 weeks, or depending on how high traffic the environment is. for security reasons, you can change the Wi-Fi password. You change it in the folder. Everybody that has access to the folder automatically gets the latest password. So you don't need to write it, as I mentioned earlier, on the whiteboard at the office, and then everybody is exposed to it, which is really crazy. So especially admin servers, you might have a rule that says from an enterprise perspective, every admin server will reset its password automatically every 2 weeks. The biggest issue is you always have then passwords WhatsApped between IT people saying, oh, what is the latest, to the particular server or that server. With the sharing of the folder, you can just, because you've got access to it, you've already been authenticated using MFA again, all of a sudden now automatically get the latest password without having to worry about it. And it's easy to share passwords in a very secure manner, because as I mentioned already, all encrypted, right? So you don't actually have to share the password. You can just put it in a share folder. People can all have access to it based on their authentication without having to WhatsApp it or email it, which is obviously a lot more exposed and less secure.
When talking about security, like you highlighted, Yaron, I mean, it's extremely important to highlight the fact that LastPass is a GDPR compliant organization, an ISO 27001 compliant organization, a SOC 2, SOC 3 compliant. So we are literally taking like banking grade security measures, because in the end, we are serving so many like organizations from the fintech environment, from banking, from government, and how could we have like achieved all of this if we were not implementing such security practices? And I'm not certainly technical and not the person like who is going to go deep into like technical areas, but just to give you some algorithm like which we are leveraging, and as I think that most of the audience will be familiar with, I mean, we are leveraging like AES 256-bit encryption algorithm with TLS encryption. This would make it quite like impossible for a hacker, like to compromise a password if you are implementing LastPass, if you're using LastPass. So, but we'll be happy to provide you all of this technical documentation if need be, of course, or answer any further questions.
Yeah, I'd just like to add that when you start becoming an advanced user of LastPass, and it's really become part of your everyday because it's on your phone and it's on your Mac, and you create passwords with LastPass. LastPass makes it really easy for you in the browser, on your mobile app, to create a really difficult to remember password. And because it automatically gets added to the vault, you never have to remember it again, because it's in the vault. You're not supposed to remember all these difficult passwords. And most people are worried about making the password too difficult, but this is what we need to do in this very advanced cybercrime world that we live in. We've got to make them really difficult to be able to protect ourselves. And then the easy access that LastPass allows you to do when you log in, Chrome automatically with the extension says to you, would you like to use LastPass? You choose LastPass. You can do facial recognition immediately for multi-factor authentication and log in. It's a seamless, easy to use process. And I really recommend that you give it a try. We have a free download version for everybody who's attending the webinar. You can go to LastPass, download it. We can make it available to you. You can speak to one of your salespeople or account managers at DSG. Would be happy to assist you. But if you'd like to even pilot the enterprise version, we can arrange that for you for a short period to show you how valuable this product is and how easy it is for you to actually manage your passwords in a secure way with best practices without compromising the user experience. And I think that's very, very important, making it easy actually for executives to do their job rather than have to remember all these different MFAs and having to have a separate device and complicating lives. So I think our aim is to simplify lives, not to complicate it, and make passwords really, really easy to use and to be used appropriately with best practice.
Excellent. So just a quick question, Yaron, you sound like a heavy user of LastPass. Do you see value in the sort of the dark web monitoring? Because there is a portion that tells you. Does that help you in terms of understanding whether you've been pawned and so on? Yeah,
definitely, because I particularly am very sensitive about my own data and what I share with different websites and what I do. LastPass gives you a sentry alert via email when a site that you use has been hacked, so you're aware of it. You can easily go back with a link to go back into that site, change that password, make sure that it's up to date, and protect yourself. And because I don't use the same password on on 2 different sites, because I use LastPass and I use best practices, I know that the only thing that may have been compromised is the data that I shared with that particular organization. And then I take measures if necessary to obviously protect that data and do something. It all depends which organization was hacked. Obviously, when LinkedIn was hacked and I got a sentry alert from LastPass, I was really concerned because I do have quite a bit of data there, quite a big network, and I didn't want anybody else in my network to be affected. So, you know, you monitor it for a couple of days afterwards to make sure that your data doesn't appear on the dark web again or anything like that. And you have to do dark web monitoring these days because we use identity and so many different ways digitally with so many different devices. It's so difficult to keep up to date. It's really nice to get the sentry alert from LastPass to let you know that there has been a compromise. It's inevitable that it would happen. Okay, you can then take the necessary measures and act on it. And in fact, I had a discussion with an insurance company that wants to actually make it, you know, reduce the cyber insurance if people use products like LastPass because they recognize how, you know, passwords are so important and so critical, and how most breaches actually happens because of bad password management. Over 70% of breaches. I really think that if insurance companies are now saying, look, if you use a tool to help me mitigate the risk, you know, I'll lower your insurance premium, this is definitely something that most corporates in South Africa need to look at and need to invest in order to protect themselves from the human firewall and the issues that happen when, you know, we don't take precautions to protect the data.
Excellent. Well answered. I think one of the things, just in closing, maybe Umut and then Yaron, over to you, just a quick closing, you know, thank you and so on, because I see we literally have kind of 1 minute. So maybe just a thank you to the audience and your time, Yaron and Umut. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And to the audience, please feel free to visit us either at lastpass.com or dsg.co.za. You'll find plenty of information, or digitalresilience.co.za. There are handouts, and you will receive this post attending our webinar today. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see you at South Africa next month. Take care. Cheers.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone.